Welcome to Meta News. I am El Blanco. I'm with the Meta News business segment, and this is the Blanco business news segment. And tonight, we're going to go over a few definitions that I thought was important for all the creators to know from Horizon. And in the near future, we will be going into depth on these definitions. And tonight is just an introduction to certain defined terms that you will need to understand. It's going to go a long way in the future when it's time for the creators to protect their interests and their properties. So we have the first definition that I would like to introduce, and this definition is digital property. And the definition for digital property means the ownership and management of and rights related to a digital account and digital asset. And I want you to pay attention. It says ownership as well as the management of rights related to a digital account and a digital asset. And that definition comes from lawinsider.com for those who want to look it up and go into detail. The next definition, digital asset. It means an electronic record in which an individual has a right or interest. The term does not include an underlying asset or liability unless the asset or liability is itself an electronic record. So we'll skip the second half just to keep focus on what it is. A digital asset is an electronic record in which an individual has a right or interest in. A digital asset. The next term will be intellectual property right. Again, an intellectual property right, which is all rights arising from the performance of an agreement, including copyrights, patent rights, know-how, trade secrets, and other intellectual property rights, which is another word would be creator's right. If you create something, you're a creator. So once again, intellectual property right is all rights arising from the performance of an agreement, including copyrights, patent rights, the know-how, trade secrets, and other intellectual property rights. Then the next term would be intellectual property rights, but this is a different definition. It says it in a different way. I think it's more enhanced, where it means any patent rights, copyright, trade secret, trade name, service marks, trademarks, trade dress, moral rights, know-how, and any other similar rights or intangible asset to which rights of ownerships accrue in all registrations, applications, disclosures, renewals, extensions, continuations, or reissue of any of these rights hereinafter or enforced. Since intellectual property can be bought, sold, or leased out, it offers many protections equal to real property ownership. Likewise, similar remedies exist. And what a remedy is, if there's a violation or a breach, the same type of remedies in law that exist to bring you compensation or to make you whole is the same as if it was a real property ownership or real property interest. Okay, so there are a couple of things that I want you to know, that even though we're talking about definitions that's talking about digital rights or digital assets or intellectual property rights, if you was to look at the Constitution, which is part of the law of the land, along with the laws of the United States as well as the treaties, the U.S. Constitution has a section that says to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. And that's pretty much in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the United States Constitution. And so it's basically saying that the United States Constitution contains both specific protections for and limitations on intellectual property. These protections were not placed there by multinational corporations. That means it ain't just done by corporations such as Meta or Horizon. But they said rather the protections of intellectual property in the Constitution were basically a logical extension of the protection of property and were designed to protect the rights of creators and inventors. And then it goes on and on. We can look into the world's international protection of intellectual properties, WIPO, WIPO, or we can look further into the human rights and the Declaration of Rights that's dealing with intellectual properties. If you want to understand more about your property rights here in Horizon, you would go to the Creative Commons license. Once again, that's Creative Commons, COMMONS license, and it'll tell you verbatim what the rights are and how they look at your rights as the property owned in here, who owns it and to what extent, and how you're what you're agreeing to do with it and so forth, or how you intend to share rights to it. And it goes on and on, but I'm not going to go into those things because at a later date we plan on doing an exclusive show particularly on this topic to help all creators be prepared to understand what rights they do have and how to protect those rights and where the law is that explains it so that when the time comes, you won't be in the dark. So tonight, that was my intent to bring to Horizon a few definitions to get started on, to look into, to take the terms you've heard, look into those terms and get a general understanding so that when you do have these conversations, you won't be in the dark and you won't be misled. Because I've been in enough conversations in Horizons to know that a lot of creators really don't understand that they have intellectual property rights and what those intellectual property rights consist of, as you have other members of Horizon who don't understand and is putting out information that's not absolutely correct. So this is something that I plan on addressing and bringing to the Horizon family. And so you're hearing it here on Meta News, the premier source for news in Horizon worlds. And thank you for tuning in tonight, and good night.